Dear friends, 2 months ago, I left my home in Jerusalem to go to a conference on religions and the environment at the University of Wisconsin. I arrived at JFK Airport at the border control, and the officer there asked me what my business was in the country. And I told him I'd come to speak at a conference on religion and the environment. And he said to me, "What does religion have to do with the environment?" I was horrified, and I told him so. I told him that a religion that doesn't care about the environment isn't worthy of the name. That how could one be truly religious and claim that one is in communion with the divine presence in the world and be insensitive and even complicit in the degradation of the work of his hands? It is beyond my comprehension how any person cannot see how imperative the issues that face us concerning climate change and global degradation are for a truly religious, spiritually sensitive world outlook. We affirm that the cosmos is the manifestation of the Creator, that the heavens declare the presence of God, and the firmament his wonders. Indeed, the words that we heard, wonderful words from His All Holiness Patriarch Bartholomew at the opening session, were articulated hundreds of years ago by the medieval Jewish mystics. Rabbi Isaiah Horowitz or Rabbi Judah Loewy, the Maharal of Prague, all affirmed that the commandment to love God means that you have to love his creatures and his creation. You cannot love God, you cannot be truly, spiritually alive if there is no care for your fellow human persons and above all the vulnerable and the cosmos, the home in which we live. And Proverbs and Isaiah chapter 60, share your food with the hungry, make it clear that the very fundamental biblical imperative is to care for the needy in our world. The statement of Genesis that we are here to develop and sustain our world makes it clear that environmental responsibility is inextricably connected to our religious obligations. The Hebrew Bible, however, goes one stage further. It indicates very clearly that there are consequences if we fail to follow these principles which are universal to all religions, that love of God means love of our fellow human beings and love of our world that manifests his divine presence. Many of you will be familiar with the fact within Jewish tradition we read portions of the Pentateuch, of the Torah, in weekly sequence. This Sabbath, tomorrow, in synagogues throughout the world, we will read a passage from Deuteronomy that includes the text from Deuteronomy 11, telling us that if we follow these divine imperatives revealed to the people, then we will have good rains, we will have good harvests, we will be able to prolong our existence on the land. Maimonides, the great medieval Jewish thinker, scholar, philosopher, and man of medicine from the 12th century, as a rationalist, could not understand this text as anything other than a metaphor. Jews recite this text, in fact, every morning and every evening. And for him, it was a metaphor to indicate the fact that there are spiritual consequences if we fail to live in a godly, goodly manner, and that therefore the language is simply the language of the simple farmer who knows about rains and about harvests, could understand, to be able to indicate a far more profound idea. But today, friends, we can understand this text more literally, more vividly, more dramatically than ever before. For as we have already heard, What is the source of the degradation of our environment, the pollution of our cosmos, acid rain, devastation of our resources? It is in no small part the result of our failure to concern ourselves with the consequences of our actions. Unbridled greed, massive material idolatry that is insensitive to the plea and the needs of the vulnerable, that defies and denies the divine imperative of our responsibilities. There are many important issues in our world today, and there are many important issues that all our religions challenge us to address. But the truth be told, that all these issues are moving the chairs on the deck of the Titanic as we head towards imminent catastrophe. There is no issue for religious leaders and religious communities more imperative and immediate than the very capacity to be able to preserve our global home, to be able to combat the degradation of our environment, the assault on the vulnerable, the inability to be able to guarantee that our children and our grandchildren, as it says in that text in Deuteronomy, shall be preserved on the land that the Lord your God gives you. The environmental lawyer and advocate Gus Speth has summed up the challenge succinctly. I quote, "I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address those problems. But I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that," end of quote. But religions do know how to do that. That is what religions are at their essence. What they are about at their essence, spiritual and cultural transformation. Accordingly, religious people, and especially religious leaders, all religious communities, have the greatest responsibility to engage and lead the movements to preserve and sustain our environment and ensure longevity for our children and grandchildren, both out of pragmatic self-interest as well as for the most altruistic of reasons, for the spiritual welfare of society. Above all, to do so is to affirm our love and reverence for the Creator and source of all life, sustenance, and goodness. May we be worthy of the challenge.